Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. We have a guest, the second interview ever on the channel, UFC middleweight Chris Curtis. He accepted a short notice fight at UFC London against Jack Hermansson, a massive fight for his career. Chris, thank you for coming back on the channel.
Thanks for having me, man. I try to be a friend of the channel. I consider you a friend, so I'm always happy to drop in and just shoot the shit with you.
Yeah. So you got this fight now with Jack Hermansson. I was curious, does the media attention, I know it's only been a couple days since you accepted the fight. Does the media attention that you've gotten for this fight so far seem different than other fights?
Uh, yeah, I guess I'm less of yes, it is a little bit. I'm less of an unknown quantity at this point, so now it's less. Who the hell is this guy taking a fight? We're to like, oh, he's stepping in again on short notice. So it's a little bit different, but it's all the same. But it's I guess people now kind of have an idea who I am, so that's a little bit nicer.
Yeah. So before we even get into the Jack Hermansson fight, I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to talk to you after the Rodolfo Vieira fight. Before you even had another fight, I was planning on reaching out to you, seeing if I could talk to you about that fight. What was your assessment after that fight? Like, how did you feel that fight went for you?
Um, Happy with the win. Looking back on it, there's some moments in the fight where I think like I maybe could have got. I think I could have gotten the finish if I was playing it too safe in certain areas. But then again, like it's Rodolfo Vieira, so like if I mess up once, he probably strangles me. It's weird, man, because like I'm very confident in my ability to grapple and do whatever. But I'm just like, there's confidence, but like every dead body on Mount Everest was once a very confident person. So like I can be confident, but like being confident doesn't mean you can actually do it. So I kind of got mad at myself. I feel like I took a little bit, like I played safe in some places, but at the same time, I really didn't want to get strangled by Rodolfo Vieira. But overall, I'll take the win, and I showed some good takedown defense, some good fight IQ, so I'll take it.
Yeah, so going into that fight, when we did I did the first interview with you. I asked you, you had fought at welterweight, you had mixed it up at middleweight, and you talked about, depending on how you felt in the Vieira fight, maybe you would decide to go back to welterweight if you felt too big, even if you won and you felt too big. How did it feel in there against him? Because he's a pretty big middleweight himself.
He's a big dude. He's Rodolfo Vieira, the big guy, guys. I felt good, man. I didn't feel overpowered. I didn't feel just too small. Like I've done a lot of work with UFC PI about putting on some size and strength and just explosiveness. I felt good. I didn't feel undersized at all. So like I guess Hermansson's the next test. So we'll see how we feel against a top 10 guy. And yeah, man, like when we lose a draw, we'll kind of evaluate and see like how I feel overall. If he goes out there and suplexes me 6 times, maybe we'll be like, oh, okay, like I gotta make some changes. But if I don't feel bad in this fight, I don't feel too small. Why not stay here? Like my life is way easier. I can take short notice fights. I love 85, man. I love middleweight. Like I think the sport would be a lot more fun, and fighters would have more fun if they fought closer to their natural ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys drain themselves to get down to a certain weight class, and then it ends up kind of be diminishing returns because maybe they have a size advantage, but they end up having, issues because they have to cut so much weight.
Oh, for sure. At 70, man, like losing between 15 and like 18 pounds, sometimes 22 pounds of water is miserable, man. Like I could make the weight, but I always felt like hell going into the fight. Like the worst feeling in the world was you're going into a fight. And I was fighting like 5 round fights a lot too, like knowing that like, oh man, I feel horrible. Then having to fight 25 minutes feeling like just absolutely drained. I think a lot of people kind of, yeah, I think you're entirely right. It's a lot of diminishing returns, and just the sport would be way more fun, and people would have way longer careers. Everybody fought closer to where they actually walk around at.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So one thing about that fight that absolutely drove me nuts, and I mean this has happened in countless MMA fights, UFC fights, whatever you want to say, is I believe you got 3 nut shots within that fight.
It's
And
yeah, they
and
say they tried to claim it was two on the broadcast, and they can go back. And the third one, like it was like toes to belt line, but heel directly on the groin. And I was just like, ah. So I took shit from that from the fans, but that was actually a gut shot too, guys.
yeah, and it's crazy because and this is what I wanted to really ask you, just as an MMA fighter in general, not even about that specific fight. Do you feel like there is so many fouls in MMA that are just unpunished, whether it be nut shots, whether it be grabbing the cage repetitively, and basically half the time the fighter that basically cheats, or whether it's purposely or inadvertently, they get away with it. Do you feel like there should be like stricter, like, okay, if this guy's grabbing the cage, he gets in an advantageous position, he either loses it, maybe loses a point. Would you like that, like more stricter of referees taking away points from fighters?
Yes and no, depending on like how egregious it is. Like with Rodolfo, like guys, like Rodolfo is one of the nicest human beings ever. I would never think like Rodolfo did it on purpose. He's a little bit newer to striking, and plus southpaw orthodox matchup, like it's completely different, and like there's a height difference. So it's just really unfortunate. It's frustrating, but I'm like I know I will say without shadow of a doubt, like entirely unintentional. It just sucks, and it happens. So like sometimes, but you do see people grab the cage to defend stuff, and there are some blatant fouls, but it's just really hard to kind of like hand out like blanket punishments because sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's just like bad luck's a thing.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean. It just seems like, it's one of those things where I remember, back in the day, everyone was complaining in the NFL. There were so many concussions, and then they just started flagging everyone for certain hits. And then over the course of years, it changed kind of a little bit. You know what I mean? So I was just wondering if you thought something like that, just stricter with taking away points. All of a sudden, guys stop grabbing fences. They're a little bit more careful with their kicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, I'm a guy who gets kicked in the nuts in practice like every other day. Like it happens a lot. Like I'm a shorter guy with a low, wide stance. I get hit in the nuts a lot, which is why like I'm like, don't take points from them. Just like talk to them about, hey, like be more careful with like where you're going. But like, I would hate to like take a point from even if I was like it's benefiting me. I don't want to win a fight that way.
Yeah,
Like
it makes sense.
I don't want to win a fight that way, especially if the guy is a mean. It's just like unfortunate, and like I get hit in the nuts every day. Like it's just a common thing. Kind of accept it. Like so, that's not the way I want to win a fight. People are like, oh, win by whatever it means, but I'm not going to be happy with myself if I win a fight because guy lost points on like an accidental foul.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You don't want to win a fight that way. So I wanted to ask you. I'm assuming you watched UFC 276, the big pay-per-view last Saturday.
Yeah.
2 Saturdays ago. I wanted to ask your opinion on two fights, or actually three fights, really. Did you happen to catch the Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz fight and see all the backlash after the eye poke? And what were your thoughts on that?
On the fight or the backlash?
Just the fact that the fight was stopped because of an eye poke, and then basically everyone was coming after Pedro Munhoz, saying basically he faked that he wanted out of the fight and stuff like that. What do you make of stuff like that?
So it's just Sean O'Malley fans, man, because like I made a tweet about not understanding the love of Sean O'Malley. I spent the next 3 hours being like attacked by Sean O'Malley fans. They're a very passionate, weird group of people. But I mean, like Pedro Munoz's eye was like swollen up after that fight, and he got a scratch cornea. It had, bro, like he didn't eye poke himself. Like 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 Sean O'Malley did it. Like I said, accidental, yeah, but like you can't be mad at Pedro Munhoz for the foul that Sean O'Malley committed. Like, come on, guys. No, it's Sean O'Malley with the weirdest fucking fans, bro. Like they're such a passionate group of weird people.
Yeah, I always call it in MMA, there's certain fighters that just have cult like followings, and no matter what happens, there will always be some weird narrative surrounding them, no matter what happens in a fight. You see it all the time with, Sean O'Malley. Sometimes you see it with like Khabib, Islam. There's a bunch of different fan bases that are just crazy no matter what, and there's really nothing you can do about it, I think.
Well, the Russian fan base is insane. And then Sean O'Malley is like the face of the TikTok generation of fight fans. So they're like rabid, angry TikTokers. So I mean, it sucks that the fight got ended, but like you can't give Pedro shit because he got blinded by Sean O'Malley. But they're never gonna hold Sean accountable, so it is what it is.
Yep. So moving on, I'm going to ask you about two more fights at UFC 276. I know your teammate Sean Strickland, and I hate to even ask you about this. What happened against Alex Pereira? What did you make of that? And how is that? I'm always curious, even for me as a fan watching some of my favorite fighters fight, sometimes it's hard to watch them lose in a specific way. How hard is that for you as a teammate watching Sean go out there and lose in the fashion that he did?
Oh, it's fucking miserable, man. It definitely ruined my night. I was absolutely fucking miserable. I hated it. that was a rough one, man. Like I was kind of broken up about that one. But it happens, man. Like at the end of the day, it's the fight game. One person's gonna win and one person's gonna lose. We've all been on that losing side before. It sucks. And like as far as the fight goes, like there was a clear path to win, but also I know Sean. And like everyone that knows Sean was like, it's gonna be a coin flip. Does he take the easy way out? Or does Sean like go out and, fight pride first? And we were all hoping that he'd take the easy path to victory, but I think deep down we all knew Sean was going to put his pride first. And I told Aaron Hawani, as I said today, man, like a lot of people won't understand because they'll be like, "Oh, it should be about the win no matter what, get paid and get the title shot." But in fighting, I think for most, especially most men, but fighters in general, but with men especially, your pride plays such a big part in your career and your ability to fight. So I do think Sean could have gone out there and wrestled him and just had this 15 minutes of taking him down and holding him. I think his pride would have taken a hit and he would have felt like he ran from it. So he did what men tend to do, and we avoid the smart thing and we protect our pride. And it happens, man. And but sometimes your pride comes before doing what's best for you. And it's just any guy can tell you that we've done stupid things in our life because we were being prideful and you didn't want to back away from that. So it sucks in this situation, but I get it. Like Sean was true to himself. He went out and he fought with his pride, and it's a loss, but he accepts it. But I think that loss it'll sting, but it'll be better than him, sitting there thinking he's a coward for wrestling him and holding him down.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last thing about Sean Strickland. Were you watching the UFC 276 press conference live? Because I'm assuming you were. What was your reaction when you were watching that?
But I was just dying because I've never seen Izzy get that flustered. And just Sean is a one-man circus, and you give him a microphone and just sit back and just welcome to the shit show, man. He's definitely his own ringmaster. And honestly, I'm down. I've seen people hit me up like Sean should be at every UFC press conference, and I'm like, I don't think that's a bad idea. he should mediate every UFC press conference. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was hilarious. I was just imagining if he did pull off the victory. I mean, imagine the clips that might end up in a UFC countdown. I don't know if they'd be able to use half of them, but it was definitely setting a tone where if he went to win, he would probably get that next shot at Israel Adesanya. So it's kind of unfortunate.
I think the UFC breathed a sigh of relief because we talked about it. Could you imagine Sean as UFC champion?
Oh my god!
The PR, I'm pretty sure the PR department was like, "Thank Jesus!"
Thank you, Alex Pereira.
Sean Strickland, UFC champion. The PR nightmare that comes from this was. I'm sure the PR team they were definitely in the building. Oh my God, thank you, sweet baby Jesus.
For sure. So one more thing I wanted to ask you about UFC 276. Did you watch the main event, Israel Adesanya, Jack Cannonier? It's the champion of your weight class.
I watched the first 2.5 rounds, and then I lost interest.
Be brutally honest. I'm curious from a fighter's perspective because you see all these fans complaining, it was boring, it was terrible, it was this and that. As a fighter, what are your honest thoughts about Israel Adesanya as a champion, the performance he's put on lately, and specifically the performance against Jack Cannonier? I'm curious of your perspective.
I thought that fight sucked, man.
Yeah.
That fight was a really bad fight. It sucks for the build-up. The best thing about that fight was definitely the walkout and just for all the build-up and everything. And then to just have a complete dud of a fight was – I get, being a champ and, fighting to retain your belt. I just feel like you have all these accolades and all this hype behind you, put the fight – put him away. Try to. Everybody asks why I don't like Izzy. And I'm like, I don't like really Izzy because I had Anderson Silva coming up, who's just better Izzy. And then I'm like, yeah, it's Izzy's just wish Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva has done everything Izzy did, but cooler and before him. Anderson Silva was out here trying to murder people. And like, it was way later in his career that Anderson Silva kind of started getting flack for like not putting guys away. And I feel like Izzy's getting to that point really, really quickly, which is it's kind of alarming. It's just, he's a good fighter, he's a great champ. It's just not my like preferred type of fight.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I was just totally curious because it's always like, oh, well, all these fans are saying this, and I was curious, you as a fighter, what you thought of it, because it's just a different perspective than it's easy for us fans to say it who are not out there, but for you who goes out there, you can definitely give us a better perspective on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it, man. And like I said before, like I would love to like just like fight Izzy or like get a round in with him because you see, it's always different when you're in the cage standing across from somebody. Like watching on TV is one thing, but when you're face to face with somebody fighting, there's certain like looks and movements and like like body posturing that like kind of you don't see, but it doesn't translate well from video. But when you're in there, you're like, okay, that's threatening. That's very threatening. So, but like you don't really see it as much as clearly through the video. So I would like to like be across from him and see like what makes guys freeze because like at the same time, as much as we give Izzy, Jared didn't try to put him away either. Jared kind of froze too. So you're like, this is your shot to be the champion. You may never get a shot again. What makes guys freeze like this?
Yeah,
So like,
I'm always curious.
I'm so curious about like what he's doing that makes guys freeze like this.
Yeah, well, there might be an opportunity coming up soon for you. Let's move on to your fight in UFC London. You're taking a fight July 23rd. You're stepping in for Darren Till and fighting number 9 ranked middleweight Jack Hermansson.
Number 8.
On short, oh, he's number 8 now. I thought it was number 9 last time I checked. How does it feel to get this opportunity, and how did it all come about?
It all came literally Wednesday. The day it was announced. I was in conditioning. I walked into conditioning. My manager runs up. And he's like, hey, do you want to fight in 2 weeks? I'm like, yes. What's it pay? He told me what the pay was. I was like, where are we fighting at? He's like, London. I'm like, who the hell is am I fighting in London? He's like, Jack Hermansson. So I was like, okay, I'm down. About an hour later, Jack said, okay. And that's how the fight came. There was like no lead up. We had no idea. Like that morning, they're just like, hey, do you want to fight in 2 weeks? And I said, yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about it when I interviewed you I think it was about a month ago before the Rodolfo Vieira fight, but you were saying, I kind of want to, get some of these fights under my belt, get a new contract. Now that you're stepping in on short notice against Jack Hermansson, one of the top 10 middleweights of the world, did you get a new contract for this fight?
Oh yes, and a substantial pay raise, and like that was my big thing. I was like, "What are they paying me?" They told me. I was like, "Sold." I'm like, "All right, let's go. I'll see you guys in London."
Yeah, hey, that's awesome. So is that just for one fight, or is that going forward?
That's the new price for my new contract is for all my fights past this. My next one is I've had a substantial pay raise.
Well, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that, man. Have you ever fought in London before or no?
No, it's my first time. I've always wanted to fight the O2, and now I get to fight in London at the O2. So I've got Madison Square Garden and the O2. The only one left after this is Saitama Super Arena in Japan, and I hit my 3 dream stadiums.
I know, dude. That's awesome. I'm assuming one of them is Madison Square Garden as well, right?
MSG already down. I got O2 next. I just need Saitama Super Arena, and I've hit everything trifecta.
Oh man, that would be awesome. I hope that happens for you. So when you got this call, did it matter the opponent? Like, are you happy that you got this top ranked guy? Or regardless, was it just about the money in general? Regardless of who it was, you would have stepped in as long as they gave you an increase?
I would have stepped in regardless, like whoever. But the fact that, I thought I was in the top 15 ranking. I didn't. And that kind of stung. And then there's like, okay, now they're like, we'll give you more money and a shot at the top 10. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, it's a short notice. The time frame is not ideal. But this is a chance I may not have gotten for another year, 2 years. So how could I say no? If you're paying me more, I get a shot at the top 10. Even if I lose, I'm still have a brand new contract and I can go fight somebody coming off of a loss. So I'm like, there's really no like loss. There's no downside in this for me. I'm just like, okay, well, like why not? Like nothing. There's no negative for this.
Exactly. Even if in the worst case scenario you were to lose, well, he stepped in on 2 weeks' notice against one of the top 10 middleweights in the world. So there's really no downside to taking this fight, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like I don't see any. I'm like, all right, people are like, oh, I'm not a guy who cares about protecting a win streak or whatever. I'm 29-8 right now. I've had 8 losses before. Like, it's I've had 8 losses. I'll lose again. I know I'm going to lose again. Everybody loses. I don't have like an undefeated record to protect. Like, fuck it, I'm just a dog. Like, and I don't lose anything for doing this. So I'm down. Like, hey, this is the
Yeah.
best case scenario.
And how do you feel like you match up with Jack Hermansson? Because looking at that top 10, if I had to pick you out an opponent that I thought you matched up the best with, I would say Jack Hermansson. Is that your thoughts on him as an opponent?
Uh, yeah, I think I matched fairly well. Like, I think I'm a better striker. I think he's got more ground accolades than me. But at the same time, I've got good defensive wrestling, and I'm very hard to submit. I'm very hard to hold down. Uh, I think this has the potential to be a really fun fight. Like, I think if I was going to fight anybody in the top 10 as a co-main event in London in front of a crazy like English crowd, I think Jack Hermansson would probably be one of the more fun fights to have.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Had this been like a main event, like a 5-round fight, would you still been okay with accepting that fight? Do you think you would have
Oh
been
yeah, I
in
would have
good
been way
enough shape?
happier. I would have been way happier at 5 rounds. Like definitely, I would have been way happier at 5 rounds. I love 5 round fights. I've never lost a 5 round fight. I love 5 round fights, and I feel like 5 rounds gives me more than enough time to like. Oh man, like my style. For a while, I was only fighting 5 round fights before I got signed to UFC. So like doing PFL and UFC, we actually had to work on like speeding up the rate at which I fought because I was so used to having 25 minutes. And then like, okay, you only get 15 now. But like I'm very geared towards fighting 25 minutes. So like I feel unstoppable in a 25-minute fight.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was wondering about that because I know you just came off a training camp, so I figured you'd be in shape for a 5-round fight if it was offered. So
I
that's
was back
awesome.
in the gym. I fought Saturday. I overslept on Sunday and I missed grappling, but I was back in the gym on Monday. Like I just back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as your cornerman, I seen some stuff online. You asking Darren Till to be your cornerman. I seen a tweet today that said Darren Till, it's official, he's going to be in your corner. Is that true? He's going to be in your corner at UFC London?
Yeah, man. So Sean has passport issues, so he can't go to London. So I know Darren. I train with Darren. I get along with Darren great. And Darren just spent 3-4 months preparing for Jack Hermansson. So if I'm gonna have a stand-in, I might as well have a guy who may have some information that'll be useful to me. So Darren will be there. Brendan Loughnane will be there as well. That was my other 2 corners. So have a couple English guys with me. So the English fans really wanted to see Darren fight. And you can't help getting hurt, man. It sucks, but it's just the way it falls. So at least he'll still be there. He'll give something back to the fans, and it's a useful corner guy for me. So it works out nicely.
Yeah. Did you have a prior relationship with Darren Till?
Yeah, he's trained him. He and Kamzat trained out in Vegas for a little bit before Kamzat's last fight. That's why I ran into him. So that's why I met Darren, and we were cool with him. He became a friend. Him and Kamzat became friends with me. So, I became friends with him. So I was like, hey, man, like, want to quarter me? He's like, yeah, sure.
Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Had Jack Hermansson been the one to pull out of the fight, would you have stepped in against Darren Till as well, I'm assuming?
I would have asked him. I would have been like, hey, do you care? But I would have asked him. And, like, if it bothered him, I got it. Like, as a friend, I respect that. And, like, you wouldn't do that to a friend. But I don't know Jack, so I'm down.
Yeah, so what's the matter, right?
Yeah.
So what's the story behind Strickland not being able to get into London? Like, what's the story behind that?
He
Some
claims that
FBI watch list?
so not that we know of, but no. He claims he lost his passport, but like pretty sure Strickland destroyed his passport, so he didn't have to go to Abu Dhabi. He claims it's lost, but I'm like, I know you, Sean. Like I know, like he lost his passport, so like yeah, and like okay, and he's never replaced it. So
Oh man, there's always something funny going on with Sean Strickland. He lost his passport.
his his life is a different one, man. Like it's a very, very different one.
So when I initially saw the news for this fight, I made a video about it. I was talking about it, and I was looking at the middleweight division, and Adesanya has beaten a lot of these guys twice, and some of the guys he's beaten haven't got a win since, like Paulo Costa. And I was looking at you. If you beat Jack Hermansson, I think there is a chance you are 1 to 2 fights away from a potential middleweight title shot, depending on how Adesanya versus Pereira goes. Is that like a dream of yours, or are you just really one of those guys that are like, I'm just here to get the biggest checks I can to fight? Is it a dream of yours to fight for the title, or is it really just about the money?
No, it was so that came. Somebody brought that up today. Like, holy crap! Never thought about that. Like, it puts you like 2 fights away from a title shot. I was like, ooh, that's weird. Never, because I've never actually thought about a title shot. Never once. It's never come to my mind. I've always had such like a struggle to get into the UFC, and now that I'm there, I'm like, okay, I got to make some money from my recoup all the years I was broke, and then like get through the rankings and get bigger and bigger, and then I kind of leapfrog some stuff. Now I'm looking around like, holy shit, I'm here. Like. I'm literally looking around like, ooh, I didn't think I'd be here yet. But like would I fight for a title? Like, yeah, sure, but like it's not something that I was like planning on doing anytime soon, or it's not something I give too much thought on. I'm a guy who's I am about the biggest check I could possibly get, and B, I always go one fight at a time. I refuse to look at fights past whatever one I have. I think I did it once as an amateur and I got beat up, so I stopped doing that. I will never look at a fight past the one I have now. But like people talk about it, I'm like, oh man, like guys, I had no idea that me being in this position is weirder for me than anyone else. I'm just looking around like they know I'm here. Like, am I supposed to be here? Like, I feel like I'm somewhere I'm not supposed to be. Like, can I be back here? Is security gonna come grab me? So it's a weird experience, man. But I'm just rolling with it.
Yeah, I honestly think you're one of the best stories in MMA because to be overlooked, to not get the contract on Dana White's Contender Series, and then now you're coming up on your 4th fight in UFC. 3 of them are going to be short notice fights. And the fact that you're going to be in the position you are in, if you beat Jack Hermansson, you're going to be ranked in the top 10. I just think that's an incredible story. Do you ever like stop to think about that at all, or is it just focus on the next opponent?
I think I've thought about it more even before that than anybody else. So for me, I try to focus on the next one because as weird as this sounds, for me to stop and think about all of that, you don't stop at just like the story. You always end up spiraling down the rabbit hole of the years before and all the good and all the bad. And it's just, I don't like going down that rabbit hole. So I try to focus on the next fight.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It looks like the next middleweight title fight is going to be Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Do you have a guy you particularly favor in that fight? Who do you think is going to win that matchup?
I don't know. Like, I feel like Izzy. I mean, Izzy was beating Alex, like arguably in those fights before he got caught. But 10-ounce gloves and 4-ounce gloves are different. They're very, very different. So I haven't really seen like Alex get into that firefight with somebody at his level in 4-ounce gloves. And but at the same time, once a guy knocks you out, like you never really like lose that like apprehension about like this guy knocked me out. So like I don't know, man. Like I really don't know. And I feel like it's just gonna be a kickboxing match, and like we've seen this twice and like Alex won both of those, but and then the way Izzy has fought lately doesn't really like instill a lot of confidence in this decision. But who knows, man? Maybe Alex motivates him to like go out there and try to put him away to end all the doubt. Like I wish I knew. Like this is the one I definitely probably wouldn't pick a fight on. I wouldn't pick a side on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's one of the most compelling middleweight fights. Even though with the last few fights haven't been particularly exciting as far as championship fights, I think it's one of the most compelling fights the UFC can make just because of the whole backstory of the 2 kickboxing matchups. And it's just so interesting because, Adesanya was arguably winning the first two, and then he ends up losing by decision, and then he ends up getting KO'd in the one. I just think it's such a compelling matchup.
Yeah, this is like a video game fight. It's like Tekken. Like it's like a real life Tekken fight. So I'm just like I don't know, man, but like it's definitely the most interesting story in MMA right now.
For sure. Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for coming on for another interview with me. I want to wish you the best of luck against Jack Hermansson on July 23rd in London. And thank you so much for joining me. And if you want to tell people where they can follow you.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me back on. Like I said, I like being a friend of the channel, man. I consider you a friend, so I like talking to you. And you get the interviews are getting smooth, man. Like you got it down. Like and everybody else, you guys can find me at on Twitter and Instagram at ActionMan513. That's it. It's simple now. It's all the same. So come by, drop a like, drop a follow, and welcome to the shit show.